Ooh, look at that. Let's talk Broncos. I don't even know if my camera's in focus. We'll see how this goes. I'm on location in a special location. Bree Maestas, Joey Richards. This is Let's Talk Broncos. Joey, I don't know what to do with myself. When there's a lot of football going on and the Broncos aren't playing, this is a late bye week, and it almost feels like it's taken me off my game entirely. But I'm happy to be here this evening. We'll get into the conversations of the bye week, and Monday Night Football is about to start and all the fun stuff that goes into it. But how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Bree, this was like the first time in a while that okay. Usually, when the Broncos don't play on a Sunday, I'm coming here. I'm like, oh, it was a relaxing Sunday. I had a relaxing Sunday. It's kind of beautiful when the Broncos don't play on Sunday. This week, felt a little disappointed by it. I
Yeah.
went to a friend's house. We watched Red Zone with a group of friends and stuff like that. Red Zone's cool. I wanted the Broncos on though. I was like, "Where's Bo Nix? Where are the Broncos? Like, show me the Broncos right now." It's just a really exciting season. Hey, I'm not even happy that we didn't get a Sunday off with the Broncos. Like, I want it right now.
Listen, Joey, I got to talk about Red Zone for a second because
We didn't
we
even.
haven't even we haven't even I literally chose not to when I started the show. Zach Seegers obviously had better things to do tonight than join us on this
This is
program.
bad though,
Uh
Bree. This is how much we slander Zach. That he's not even listening. He just comes in here and is like,
he just sees
"Yo,
my lip
more Zach
syncing.
slander." He just anticipates it at this point.
It's, right, his volume's not even on. Like he's just in the chat talking, and that's fine. Happy to see you, Zach. We miss you as always. Red Zone is wild to me because I think I have a little bit of the attention deficit disorder, and Red Zone to me is just too much. Like all of these things are going on. I'm not really able to pay attention to it. I feel like it switches between the games, and I'm like, hey, I was watching that. But it's all we watch now is Red Zone unless the Broncos are on. And I feel the same way. I feel like it was one of the things where I missed it. And normally at this time, I absolutely agree with D Bronx, where he's saying I needed this bye week. I feel refreshed. Maybe we all needed it. Maybe we just needed a little breather to get into this conversation because the postseason is upon us, Joey. And you're saying, well, we have 4 weeks left, and no, Joey, the next four games are basically playoff games for the Denver Broncos. And I think that's really important to note because we haven't been able to have this conversation in a while. Now, the Broncos have kind of played with the idea of being in contention where they've had, I don't know, a 12%, a 7%, all these different things had to happen in the league in order to make that happen. We're actually finding the idea that the Sean Payton Bo Nix combination is leading these Denver Broncos into a seriously successful, at least end of the season, right? We were all talking about what's the ceiling for this team. We were throwing out 6 wins, we were throwing out 8 wins. Now it's looking like that 10-win realm is really not out of the picture here. And I'm not trying to jinx anything. I don't believe in those things, but I just want to kind of highlight and emphasize the idea that we're having monumentally different discussions than we were to kind of enter the season, even in that week 4 range, the week 8 range, right? You chunk off the season in 4 games, little pockets. And I feel like the Broncos are really making a case for themselves in the second half of this season. And
Mhm.
Joey, I just reflect for me, right? Where are you at now as we enter this back half or this back quarter? Because I feel like our headspaces are a little bit different than they were even 4 weeks ago.
Yes. I mean, shout out. I remember this. I remember tweeting out my Broncos season prediction. I think I had them at like 8 wins. They're out succeeding. Like the expectations have been hired. I I think we got to give credit to Sean Payton though, because I think my like talent evaluation here, Bree, was pretty on point. I think I was totally wrong on Riley Moss, who has really helped this team stay together in a lot of ways. Like I think we saw it the last time when we played the Cleveland Browns. You had to put Levi Wallace in. What a departure of Riley Moss! Like the impact that has on your team, that's massive. And I didn't expect that. I thought the secondary would look worse than it is right now. The secondary has been phenomenal for the Broncos to the point where they are able to play as much man coverage as they do. So, no, my overall scope of this Broncos team right now is just excitement. If this is how they look now, I don't think it's the hardest thing in the world to say, hey, next offseason, the Broncos are going to improve talent-wise substantially. I do think that is a strong possibility here. People have to remember, Bree, we are in the depths of the Russell Wilson cap hell right now. This is the bottom of that. Next season, it's still a factor. It's still on your books, but you can backload contracts and make up for it that way. You have the richest owners in the NFL. So, hey, more signing bonuses. You can manipulate the salary cap a little more. I just think right now it's probably the worst talent-wise the Broncos will be in quite a while. So, hey, this is great news. The Broncos are looking fantastic with a rookie quarterback, and I think a roster that isn't as talented as the record may indicate. I do think that.
I think that's a fair criticism, right? I think that's why the ceiling on this team was as low as it was. There were question marks. There were holes to fill. I'm sorry, Alex does YouTube is not here in the chat to make fun of me for saying it that way. But the idea is that the Broncos had to figure out who they were. What was the identity under Sean Payton in his second year, and what was Bo Nix going to add to that? I think the success, and maybe I'm taking liberties here, but Joey, I think you qualify this season as a success here exiting week 13's bye.
Already a success of a season. Already a success. Like I said, they're just outperforming expectation. They are doing that week in and week out. They look like a well-coached football team. They look like a disciplined football team. They look like a football team that doesn't shoot themselves in the leg a lot. Like this is all stuff that's kind of carrying them to where they are right now, along with the defense just being really good. So the Broncos are well exceeding my expectations.
They are, and it points to a question as well as what do they do to add around Bo Nix? And I know we'll be talking about that a lot as we approach that time. We'll be, sending a couple of people out to. Have you guys decided which bowl you're traveling to? I know we'll have draft coverage coming at us, and maybe we'll highlight that, and we'll do a cool little surprise release for that when we come to it. But there's a lot of interesting weapons that the Broncos can target. You already highlighted the cap hell, right? What kind of moves will they make? I've been floating around the idea of a T. Higgins. Honestly, I'd like Godwin more than anything, but I know we have concerns on whether or not that injury or that player is going to return to their former selves. But I think also there's absolutely, D-Bronx. Go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl specifically so you can take a picture of the massacre afterwards, because I really just want to see that. Like, I just want to see. I need a new Twitter header picture, and that's where my head is at, as you can tell. But you're talking about, I guess, what Bo Nix has presently, right? The conversation was that you're kind of strapped down with what you have. Cortland Sutton maybe isn't what he was pre-2019 injury. We're talking off screen about how much he was, really dominating there and really didn't have the quarterback to get those kinds of numbers the last couple of years. Now we're seeing this resurgence for Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix. As of past week 8, Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix have, I believe, 42 completions, which leads the NFL wide receiver quarterback duos, even ahead of like a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. So I feel like, you're able to lean on a Cortland Sutton now. Now, I think there's still a couple of loud plays that are painting a picture of Cortland Sutton as he is as a wide receiver. But are you comfortable with that moving forward with the chemistry that's been built between him and his quarterback? Are you standing pat with a Cortland Sutton moving forward simply because it's just there?
I'm very happy with that connection right now. I'm seeing the growth in that connection every single week. It feels like it's getting a little better and better. That doesn't mean, hey, I feel absolutely comfortable with this wide receiver room, because that is not the case. I think the Broncos can upgrade this wide receiver room. I just think it also includes Cortland Sutton now. That's where I am. Like, I'm watching this growth game after game after game. That connection is very prominent. I think it's the best connection on this Broncos team by a long distance. Like, just looking at the stats, Bree, Cortland almost already has 100 yards over last year. And we were talking about Cortland's season last year. A lot of it was, hey, the spectacular plays with Russ going to Cortland, which, it did make sense because I understood the talking points because Russell Wilson was such I would call him kind of like a trick shot artist kind of at quarterback. Like a lot of the plays were loud and big. Cortland Sutton happened to be on the receiving end of those a ton. It's just crazy when you have a guy in there that I think is more consistently making the bread and butter plays where that gets you. Cortland Sutton is all of a sudden a lot more productive than he was last year. The touchdowns are always when you go down the wide receiver list. He did have more last year, but that's not really a stat that carries year to year to year. Receiving touchdowns, that's luck is involved a lot in that stat. So I'm looking more at the receptions and yards. Almost, I said, like he has like 80 more yards and 4 more catches already through the season. That is a important, I think, talking point. The Cortland Sutton has been part of trade discussions for a few years now. I would kind of throw those away. I would say we need to figure out how to keep Cortland Sutton on the team for longer than just this next year. I want Cortland Sutton on the team with Bo. I just think it's important now.
How do you feel about duplicated skill sets when that conversation comes up of like, oh, I don't want the same kind of build. Oh, I don't want the same kind of like, where can you increase like variability between what you already have on the roster? I know Patrick Coyote saying is Vele able to play the Z in this offense, which I feel like he's kind of leading you with that question. So I'm going to have you take that one. Where does it lead for what they presently have? Because I know a lot of people right now are talking about, well, let the young guys shine as well. That's all well and good, but I think we've opened up a window where you also need to win a lot next year to take emphasis and control over what Bo Nix is bringing to the table. What do you feel?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, Valet being your starting Z, it's interesting. Valet has been an awesome signing or draft pick for the Broncos this last year. I remember, Bree, for our draft coverage of this, we went live right after this pick was selected, and I hadn't heard of Valet at all, and either had Zach. And we were like, God damn, they really drafted a 26-year-old? Like, what are we doing? It turns out that was a really, really good pick for the Broncos. Comes in year one is productive. I think I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver for this Broncos team. I don't think I would put all my eggs in that basket though. I would go out there and look for veterans at the position. I would still be out there looking for a dominant wide receiver one-esque guy here in this Broncos room. I think that's important. A lot of people want that to be in the draft. I don't know if I see the draft guy that I think is that wide receiver one. So yeah, as far as you were bringing up, Bree, the skill sets, and if I want a guy in there that has a similar skill set to Cortland Sutton, I always go off of. I heard this before. I forget who said it, but I feel like everyone stole it and is saying it now. Is build your wide receiver room similar to how you would build a basketball team. You need your center, you need your point guard, you need your shooting guard. I'm looking for guys that run different speeds. I'm looking guys with completely different skill sets. It's a unique position in that way. If I'm looking at good left tackles or good guards or even a good cornerback, I think a lot of the time I'm looking for similar traits. Wide receiver, I can look for completely different things. And I think it's important to have various skill sets. Okay, I want a guy that's really good yards after catch. I want a guy that's going to win in those 50-50 situations. This guy's 6'4", this guy's 5'10". I think it's good to have various skill sets. So I don't know if I would be looking for a copy of Cortland Sutton this offense.
Well, what about a free agent, right? Like, are you going to turn your nose up at an affordable option there when you start talking about wide receiver one and the ability to kind of work a veteran in at that rate simply because you have a Cortland Sutton, right? I've never understood why you would pass up that opportunity simply because you have Court, right? It's not to say that he shouldn't get a bulk of targets. But I think when you want that versatility, I think it also just speaks volumes because you're lacking tight end play, which the chat is clamoring for here. I just think there's an opportunity to build up talent on the roster, so it's not all on a Cortland Sutton's shoulders,
Yeah.
right? Because we've seen that what that's happened what has happened with the narrative when that's the case is that you get upset about drops or possibly effort, and you start making up these conversations because everything needs a scapegoat. Everybody needs to be the boogeyman at that point. So Christopher Hart makes a great point. After a slow 5-game start, Sutton's catch rate since the Chargers game has been one of the highest in the league for any wide receiver. Chemistry with Nix is really showing up. Fantastic development. Honestly, all of Broncos country is really excited to see that, considering, pre-injury, he was a different player than we've seen the last couple of years. You factor in the quarterback play, and now he's really got the monumental ability to develop here with Bo Nix. And I think I would even, shoe him in there with like a little bit of veteran presence, and he's still got a long career ahead of him. So hopefully it's here in Denver if it works out the way that we want it to. We know contracts can really get in the way there. One other question that I had after this, I wanted to read this comment from D Bronx. My biggest NFL draft rule is don't get upset about round 5 or later picks. Guys taking that
Bro,
later likely to be on your roster a couple of years down the line anyway. And that's all about the positional value that we talk about all the time, and where these individuals are drafted. And then sometimes you get a 7th rounder who comes in and just blows you away. So you never quite know. There's obviously risk associated with that. But Joey, here's my question to you. Is it, which one would you rather have, right? You draft in the first 3 or 4 rounds and the guy just really kind of fizzles out, has an average career. Or would you rather, I guess, lose out on a late round pick that ends up doing well elsewhere? Like you get jumped in line for a player you
yeah,
really wanted. Like what's the bigger letdown there?
I don't know. I feel like both are pretty big letdowns. I mean, at least if I have a guy that's drafted late, Bree, and he goes and works out elsewhere, me, if I put my GM hat on, I'd be like, yeah, I saw it in that guy. I always knew he was going to be good. That's why I drafted him. The first round or second round or third round miss is always going to be disappointing. Shout out to Greg Dulcich.
Yeah.
I
Shouts
don't
out.
I don't want to roast the guy too much. It's just like that's one that if you're George Payton, I know he's back there kicking himself like, damn, man, he had a really good rookie season. The injuries caught up to him. That one's going to haunt me for a bit.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit about playoffs and the run there and how exciting it is for the Broncos to be in those conversations. But I guess you kind of have rooting interest tonight for Monday Night Football. I don't know if the Cowboys can get it done, but I also don't have a lot of faith in the Bengals, right? They could very easily upset everybody. Joe Burrow, having just the prime of his career and absolutely nothing to show for it. And then you've got the Cowboys who just aren't very good. And that's just the conversation that we're always having. I want to interject right now and see who you're picking tonight for Monday Night Football.
I have the Bengals winning this game. I just don't trust the
Terrible.
softest team in the league, which is the Dallas Cowboys. I don't like their offensive line. I hate their defensive line. I think the Bengals have a big offensive performance, and then it's just on how do the Cowboys keep up. So I have the Bengals in this game. I agree with you. The Bengals have been very disappointing. Their defense has been absolutely atrocious this year. Offense still very good with Joe Burrow. Even
Hmm.
even losing Joe Mixon and you have Chase Brown back there, like they are putting points on the board this year. I forget the stat. It's like I think he's lost every game where the Bengals have scored 30 plus this year, which is absurd. I think that's the stat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad. But that's just a crazy stat.
I don't know if Browntown is predicting this or if this is what it's presently at, but he said Monday Night Football score 3-2. Listen, the
Goddamn.
Bengals are going to be a thorn in our side, and we just watched the Chiefs do kind of the same thing. I know it was to, I guess, the Broncos. It's a positive, right, that the Chargers were lost that game in the fashion that they did. But I'm just sick and tired of seeing the Chiefs do what they do, right? They're not an explosive offense anymore in the red zone. They're just kicking field goals left and right. But they have Andy Reid and they have Patrick Mahomes. And how important Travis Kelsey is is not important. But
Yeah.
it's just come to a point in time where now I'm like not even spite watching anymore. Like there's a competition factor. The Broncos are now tied with the Ravens, the Chargers, in a three-way tie here. And I feel like just so many other teams are going to be able to throw a wrench in these plans. The Dolphins and the Bengals specifically, and then the Colts are even hanging out there. They have a really low chance, under a quarter of a I'd say like a 25% chance of being able to derail the Broncos here. And it feels nice now, right? I have rooting interest. I'm looking for teams to start falling. I didn't think Dolphins were going to have a late season run. I thought Tua was done for it. I didn't know if Mike McDaniel had the answer there. But there's a couple of teams that are going to make this interesting. And the Bengals they just happen to be that. I don't know if their defense gets it done down the stretch, but you were kind of surprised, right? I think I was too, that the Ravens are not being as successful in the win column
Yeah.
as they could be, especially when you're talking about like Lamar Jackson is still playing like the MVP this league. Like there's that conversation still needs to be floating around. So the Ravens are a question mark there. How are you feeling about, I guess, that race right now as it stands in the AFC? Because I feel like it's pretty tight, but I think the Broncos can pull away. I don't want to be too optimistic here.
Yeah, no, I do think I don't know. I don't have faith that the Broncos will finish in like that first of the wild card teams. They're not winning the AFC West. We can rule that out right off the bat. The Chiefs have God, the referees, maybe some mafia member that's rigging the games in
Probably.
Vegas. They got all of that on their side this year, so we can't. we're rolling out the AFC West. Now it's the wild card games. And I think I don't have as great of a faith that the Broncos finish like first in that. Second is getting close there. I'm just going to be happy, and I think we all should. Hey, make the playoffs, and I'm good. Screw the who we're playing, what's the easy path, all that. It's a successful season. The Broncos make the playoffs. I don't think many of us had us here. Vegas definitely didn't. I think the over/under on wins this year was like 6, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6.
5.5, yeah. So it was low
Yeah.
expectations here. And I think that's why I wanted to lead off the show with talking about this is already a success. The rest of it is, yeah, Joey, play your game, play who's on your schedule, get it done. And then wherever you land is where you land. Patrick Coyote coming in, confirming my 5.5 there. Appreciate you, Pat. All right, Joey, a lot of people are clamoring in the chat about tight ends, as they normally do.
Yes.
Where's your radar with that right now to improve this offense? Like if you could, let's just do the hypothetical, if you could shoe in anyone right now who's helping this team out, but also where do they go from here in that aspect? Because that is absolutely a glaring indiscretion here on this offense.
I think the Broncos could go a plethora of ways this offseason. This is an area where I clearly think the Broncos can add a new facet to their offense in a single offseason like that. Tight end typically takes the longest to develop in the NFL, one of the longest positions to actually see results from. Quite frankly, I disagree with a lot of the people saying that right now, because I feel like earlier or more recent results, we're seeing a lot better results from tight ends earlier in their career. If it's not first year, it's sophomore year. It could be rookie season, as we've seen with Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers in back-to-back years, right? Or even going to Kyle Pitts, who a lot of people like to point out and say, hey, that's a bust. Injuries, I want to remind people, injuries catch up to players. And he had 1,000 yards. He had his best season as a rookie pre-injury. I really do think that this is a case of offenses being better at utilizing tight ends earlier. It was always the argument I always heard, and for me at least, people say things, you have data points. I like to know why that's the case. Like, why do tight ends not work out early in a lot of scenarios? The answer I always received was, it's because, hey, dude, they're learning 2 positions at once. They have to know how to block. They know how to receive. They need to know a bunch of different things, polar opposite skill sets. They need to be good at both to see results. I think offense have gotten a lot better at, okay, so he's not the greatest inline blocker, but when we have him block on the move, when we're doing different creative ways to utilize him in the blocking game, we can take advantage of your receiving skill set, which is a big thing. Detroit, who Ben Johnson, very similar to Sean Payton's student, right, has done with Laporta, and we saw early results. So I do think that this is a position the Broncos can upgrade in year one with a guy drafted at tight end for the Broncos. And I think there's a plethora of tight ends they can draft. It's a great, great tight end class. I'm big on drafting where it's strong, and tight end is one of those positions. I look at Gunnar Helm. I look at Colton Loveland. I look at Fannin, who is an under the radar guy who's had a monster season. There's a lot of great tight ends in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those points. Oh, we have a question. Oh, that's an interesting question, Browntown. Maybe we'll hit you up on the end of the show. I have points to hit. It's not because your question's not important. Anyways, I got distracted by that because I wanted to make sure I was getting to chats, but I am pressed on time too, so I want to be relegated to that as well. Riley Moss is a big question mark today, right? Now we're hearing that he probably won't be available until post Bengals game, which makes it a little bit questionable out there. We obviously saw Levi Wallace struggle. It opened the door for some Chris Abrams drain um, uh, time and some snaps there. But are you worried about that extended time missed for Riley Moss? I mean, obviously the answer is yes, but what do the Broncos have to do, and what are we? What are we gonna do there? And does that give you enough concern where you feel like it's going to be hard to contend with this last quarter of the schedule?
Yeah, I think it is a major concern one. I feel less comfortable in this Broncos defense without Riley Moss. I think they are so comfortable running this much man coverage, doing the creative blitzes, doing all of that. In part of we have a lot of faith in our cornerbacks. We saw what happens when Levi Wallace comes in. It was a disaster. The Broncos were forced to run more zone defense in response to that because we can't just leave Levi Wallace out there like we did Riley Moss. Riley Moss is phenomenal. So that's why we feel comfortable letting them do that. Levi Wallace, not the same. So I think it starts off with probably trying something new. I don't think I'd just throw Levi Wallace back out there. Nonetheless, the Broncos defense, Bree, just straight up honest. I don't know if there's just a fix you can throw in there. I think it changes this Broncos defense until he's back and he's healthy and playing at the level he did. I just think that you probably could find better than what Levi Wallace showed against the Browns, straight up. So I would just change it, give different bodies an opportunity to play, and then the results you get are kind of the results you get. I don't blame Vance Joseph for that last game. I blame injuries taking away what made the Broncos successful on that side of the ball.
Sure, and I think it does, you have enough confidence in Vance Joseph to figure out what he's going to do in those times, right? When you go down a Pat Surtain, when you go down a Riley Moss, then you have to figure out what you're going to do to I guess stop the hemorrhage, right? The last thing you want to do is have offenses score a whole ton of points on you. And I think that's what Vance Joseph's task is going through this kind of end of the season. The Chargers are going to want to run the score up, and so are the Bengals. And I just don't feel down and out, right? I don't feel depressed on that prospect because I feel like Vance will figure it out.
Mhm.
He was able to do so even, with the Cardinals. There was still a question of like having those limiting roster holes. And it's just frustrating, right? When injuries actually hit this team, they've been healthy so much of the year that it's kind of this one that's leaving that sullied mark on this season, but hopefully it gets figured out. I don't have any insider information as to how serious it is, but I feel like this initially wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but now kind of is a big deal. Is just kind of a gut punch that I wasn't anticipating. I wanted to give your kudos, Joey, because Paul said you had some good
That's for
points.
everybody.
I know, and Michael Carmelini said this is why Joey makes the big bucks. Yeah, exactly. He gets a percentage point higher than me simply because he's really good at what he does.
Yeah. Without Brie, the show wouldn't run for anybody that doesn't know. She is the brain behind it in a lot of aspects. She puts Zach and I on the right wavelength. I don't know if you guys have seen Zach and I on our own. It's a fucking disaster a lot of the time. We're just
They
arguing.
forget the score. They forget what they're doing.
Zach
I
and
don't like
I
I
Zach and I argue about which assistant coach is better for 30 minutes when it's just us. We need someone to set us off. So Bree runs the show in a lot of aspects. So shout out to Bree.
Zach will not like that information. So that will just have to be what's happening. All right, guys. I know it's a short kind of show, short kind of program, but we just wanted to make sure that we got the facts to you straight away. But don't worry, we'll be back. And listen, you're more looking forward to Tuesday, anyways. Tuesday's altitude adjustment is going to be one heck of a show. I'll let Mario put that information out on Twitter, but you can catch Mario Vitanzi and Patrick Coyote tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, altitude adjustment, 8 p.m. Without Zach, you'd never know you're muted. Well, it's like he's muted right now because he's not able to participate. Just act like you can see him talking in the top hand corner as we speak. Wednesday, we will be back. We'll get to talk some Broncos football and what else is happening. Pat, I'm not able to say it because when I do, everyone laughs at me and thinks that I'm being
you'll get DM
disingenuous. Yeah, just bricked up. Looking forward to that segment tomorrow night. Wednesday, we'll be back as a trio. Actually, it might be just Joey and us. I feel like I'm misleading you here. And yeah, check out any of the older episodes of Full Field Read if you want your film fix. That's what I've been doing this evening, which is why I'm at where I'm at, watching the film, breaking it down. And now I'm going to go watch some Monday Night Football. I hope you all do the same. I know, Patrick, I already said it's going to be a special guest. I already said it's going to be a special show. Check it out. Set your notifications. Put it in your calendar. Actually, while you're here, take out your phone, put it in your calendar. You got to tune in to tomorrow's altitude adjustment. Probably one of my favorite guests. So, all right, Joey, anything else you want to put out there on the show before I get us out of here?
Just hey, Colorado made the Alamo Bowl. Shout out to them. They're going to beat the hell out of BYU. It's going to be a beautiful thing. They're on the recruiting trail.
Go Buffs.
And make sure you guys, if you guys like the Buffs, subscribe to Let's Talk Buffs. And that's all I got. Shout out to everybody in the chat tonight. Love you all.
Let's talk Buffs. Jason had a comment, and no, I'm not really old enough to, but I can still respect it. And that's what it's about. Pat said, go Ducks. And on that note, we're out. Go Broncos.